Tractate Menachos, General Introduction. Tractate Menachos, the second tractate of Seder Kodashim, deals with the laws of flour offerings. Menachos, singular Mincha, are offerings whose main ingredient is flour, in either its raw form or as a baked or fried cake. Tractate Menachos may be considered a companion tractate to Zevachim. Zevachim discusses the different types of animal korbanos, sacrificial offerings, and Menachos continues with the various forms of flour korbanos. These discussions fall into two categories. The opening chapters 1 through 4, focus on the avodah, sacrificial service of the Mincha, and the many things that invalidate it. This parallels the discussions of Zevachim. The second part of the tractate discusses the different types of Menachos and a comparison of how they are prepared. The most essential features of the avodah of the Mincha offering parallel those of the animal korbanos. This introduction will assume that the reader is already familiar with the basic laws of korbanos, especially those that apply to animal korbanos. These have been extensively outlined in the general introduction to Zevachim. 1. Comparison to animal offerings. A. Similarities. As noted in the general introduction to Zevachim, a korban is not, as a rule, burnt in its entirety on the Mizbeach, altar. Rather, a part of the korban is separated and placed on the Mizbeach. That is what makes the entire korban valid, and permits the remainder for consumption, for those korbanos that may be eaten. In the case of the animal korban, the blood, which is separated from the animal through shechita, slaughter, is the critical substance. When the blood is applied to the wall or horns of the Mizbeach, depending on the type of korban, the emurin, sacrificial parts, can be burnt on the Mizbeach, and, for most korbanos, the rest of the korban is eaten by the kohanim or the owner and his guests. In the case of the mincha, a small part of the flour and oil of the offering is removed by the kohen through the process of kemitza, see below, and burnt on the mizbeach. This portion is known as the kometz. In addition, most mincha offerings are sprinkled with a substance known as levona, see below. This too must be separated from the remainder of the offering and burnt on the mizbeach. The burning of the kometz and levona validates the mincha and permits its remainder shiraim for consumption. Furthermore, just as 4 essential avodos make up the sacrificial procedure of the animal offering, so too there are 4 essential avodos that make up the offering procedure of the mincha. This will be discussed further below. Another similarity is that, as with the animal offerings, the 4 avodos of the mincha's sacrificial procedure are all essential, me'akvin, i.e., any defect in their performance invalidates the offering. B. Differences. There are a number of basic differences between an animal korban and a mincha. For one thing, the animal korban has 3 elements: the blood, whose application to the mizbeach is critical to the validity of the offering; emurin, a combination of fats and internal organs that are burned on the mizbeach, but whose burning is not critical to the validity of the offering; and the meat of the offering that is eaten by the kohanim or the owner. The mincha, on the other hand, has no more than 2 components: that which is burnt on the mizbeach, the kometz and levona, and the remainder that is eaten by the kohanim. All parts of the mincha designated for burning must be burnt on the mizbeach for the mincha to be valid. 2. Ingredients of the mincha. Most menachos contain 3 ingredients: flour, oil, and levona. A. Flour. A mincha must contain at least 1 isaron, 1/10 of an ephah, of fine wheat flour known as soles. An isaron is the volume of 43.2 eggs. A voluntary mincha may contain up to 60 isarons of flour. See Mishnah in chapter 12, Mishnah 4. As stated, the flour in a mincha is generally soles, fine wheat flour. However, there are 2 menachos that are made of barley flour, the omer and the sotas mincha. These are described below. B. Oil. A mincha generally contains 1 log, the volume of 6 eggs, of olive oil. The amount of oil added to a voluntary mincha containing more than 1 isaron of flour is the subject of dispute in the Mishnah in chapter 9, Mishnah 3. According to the majority opinion, it requires 1 log per isaron. A minchas nesachim, which accompanies an animal korban, contains either 2 or 3 lugin of oil per isaron of flour, depending on the type of animal being offered. See below section 3c. Aside from the oil, water is added to those menachos that are baked or fried in order to properly knead the dough. See Chapter 5, Mishnah 2. C. Levona. Most Menachos also contain a measure of levona. Levona is not mixed into the Mincha. It is in fact inedible. Rather, it is placed on top of it. The amount of levona required is a kometz. See Chapter 13, Mishnah 3. The amount that fits into the middle 3 fingers of the hand when they are folded over the palm. Most Menachos require both oil and levona. However, some Menachos require only oil and not levona, and some require only levona and not oil. The shtei halechem, 2 loaves, brought on Shavuos, the sinner's mincha, and the sota's mincha, see below, require neither oil nor levona. See Chapter 5, Mishnah 3. 3. Categories of mincha. Menachos fall either into the category of an individual's mincha or communal mincha. We will discuss these separately. We will then discuss the minchas nesachim, mincha of libations, which can be brought by either an individual or the community. A. The individual's mincha. An individual's mincha fits into one of 2 general categories: voluntary menachos, that are brought as the result of a personal vow, and obligatory menachos, which the individual must bring for any of a variety of reasons. 1. The voluntary mincha. The Torah in Vayikra chapter 2 lists 5 types of voluntary menachos. 1. Minchas solis, mincha of fine flour, which is offered in its raw flour state. 2. Minchas machavas, mincha of a griddle, which is offered after it has been fried on a griddle. 3. Minchas mar cheshes, mincha of a pan, which is offered after being fried in a pan. And 4 and 5. Oven-baked mincha. This type of mincha is baked in an oven. It comes in 2 varieties: chalos, loaves, and rekikin, wafers. The procedure for preparing each of these menachos is detailed below. The designation of the type of mincha to be offered generally takes place at the time of the original vow. The person declares what type of mincha he will bring by saying, for example, "I hereby accept upon myself to bring a minchas soles." Later, he sets aside flour to fulfill his pledge by stating, "This is for my vow." Instead of doing this in 2 steps, he can also do this all at one time by declaring, "This isaron of flour is for minchas soles." If someone pledged to bring a mincha without specifying which type, by declaring, "I take upon myself to bring a mincha," there is a dispute among the Tanaim what he must do. Some hold that he may designate whatever type of mincha he chooses. According to another opinion, he must bring a minchas soles. See Chapter 13, Mishnah 1. 2. The obligatory mincha. In addition to voluntary menachos, the Torah also requires an individual to bring a mincha offering on certain occasions. An individual may be required to bring one of 4 types of menachos. 1. Sinner's mincha. This mincha is brought by someone who has transgressed a prohibition that obligates him to bring a variable chatas offering for atonement, but who is so poor that he can afford neither an animal nor a bird as a korban. The situations in which this chatas are brought are described in Vayikra chapter 5, verses 1 through 4. This mincha consists of solas alone. It has no oil or levona. 2. Sota's mincha, literally mincha of jealousy. This mincha is brought as part of the process connected with testing the sota, a woman suspected of adultery, under the special circumstances described in the Torah in Bamidbar chapter 5. It consists of barley, flour, and has no oil or levona. Both the sinner's mincha and the sota's mincha are offered unbaked. Their only ingredient is flour. A kometz is removed and burned on the mizbeach, and the remainder is given to the kohanim. 3. Minchas chavitin, Kohen Gadol's mincha. This mincha is brought each day by the Kohen Gadol. See Vayikra chapter 6, verses 12 through 15. It consists of 1 isaron of soles with 3 lugan of oil, kneaded and baked into 12 loaves. The chavitin offering is brought in halves, 6 loaves in the morning and 6 loaves in the afternoon. See Rashi 87b, Ravad, Hilchos, Maseh HaKorbanos 13:4. According to others, 12 half loaves are brought in the morning and 12 half loaves in the afternoon. See Rambam Hilchos Maseh HaKorbanos 13:4. The mincha is brought with a kometz of levona, which is also divided and offered in halves. See Rambam there. 4. The inaugural mincha. This mincha is brought by a Kohen on the day that he begins serving in the Beis HaMikdash. It is also brought by a Kohen who becomes Kohen Gadol, in addition to the chavitin offering, on the day that he is inaugurated. Its procedure is identical to that of the chavitin, except that it is offered all at once, not in halves. See Rambam Hilchos Maseh HaKorbanos 13:4. See, however, Mishnah Lamelech Hilchos Kli Hamikdash 5:17. The Chavitin and the inaugural Mincha, as well as all Menachos brought by a Kohen, are burnt on the Mizbeach in their entirety. B. The communal Mincha offerings. 3 Mincha offerings are required of the community. 1. The Minchas HaOmer, Omer Mincha. This Mincha is brought on the second day of Pesach, the 16th of Nisan. It consists of barley that was harvested and milled in a special manner, see chapter 6. It is mixed with a log of oil and brought with levona. A komets of the barley and all of the levona are burnt on the Mizbeach. The remainder of the Mincha is eaten by the Kohanim. The offering of the Omer permits the year's new crop of grain to be eaten. See Vayikra chapter 2, verses 14 through 17, and chapter 23, verses 9 through 14, and see the Mishnah in chapter 10, Mishnah 5. 2. Lechem Hapanim. We are commanded by the Torah to bake 12 loaves each week and arrange them in 2 stacks on the Shulchan, the golden table that stands in the Kodesh, holy of the Beis Hamikdash. These 12 unleavened loaves of bread are accompanied on the Shulchan by 2 spoons full of levona. Each Shabbos, the bread and levona are removed and replaced. The levona is burnt on the Mizbeach, and the bread is then eaten by the Kohanim. See Vayikra chapter 4, verses 5 through 9. Although no part of the bread itself is offered on the Mizbeach, the Lechem Hapanim are considered part of the category of Mincha offerings. See Rambam Hilchos Maseh HaKorbanos 12:1 through 3, Rashi Vayikra 24:9. 3. Shtei Halechem, 2 loaves. On Shavuos, 2 communal Shlamim lambs are brought. They are accompanied by 2 loaves of leavened chametz bread. The loaves, known as the Shtei Halechem, literally the 2 loaves, do not undergo kemitza, and no part of them is brought on the Mizbeach. Indeed, it is forbidden to offer anything leavened on the Mizbeach. Moreover, they are not accompanied by levona. Rather, the Torah requires that the Shtei Halechem be waved together with the 2 lambs in a rite known as tenufa, see below. This links the lambs and the loaves, so that the slaughter of the lambs causes the loaves to become sanctified, and applying their blood to the Mizbeach permits the loaves to be eaten by the Kohanim. The Shtei Halechem are in the category of Mincha offerings, although no part of them is offered on the Mizbeach. See Rambam Hilchos Maseh HaKorbanos 12:1 through 3, Rashi Vayikra 24:9. C. Minchas Nesachim, Mincha of libations. This mincha is brought to accompany each animal olah and shalamim offering, whether voluntary or obligatory, whether personal or communal, such as the musaf brought on Shabbos and festivals. In addition, the chatas and asham of the mitzvah require nesachim. The size of the mincha varies according to the type of animal offered. 3 isarons of flour mixed with 6 lugin of oil for a bull, 2 isarons with 4 lugin for a ram, and 1 isaron with 3 lugin for a lamb. It is also accompanied by a nesech libation of wine. The amount of wine per animal equals the amount of oil. See Vayikra chapter 14, verses 10 and 20, and Bamidbar chapter 15, verses 1 through 12. A person may also voluntarily donate a minchas nesachim in any of the above measures, without attaching it to an animal korban. See the Gemara 104b. The minchas nesachim does not contain levona. It is entirely burnt on the Mizbeach. The accompanying wine is poured on the Mizbeach, as described below. D. Additional mincha type offerings. The mincha offerings discussed to this point are all in the category of kodshei kodashim, most holy offerings, which may be eaten only by Kohanim and only in the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. This tractate also devotes attention to certain baked items that are included in the avodah, but are in the category of kodashim kelim, offerings of lesser holiness, which may be eaten even by non-Kohanim anywhere in Jerusalem. 1. Todah breads. The Torah requires that a todah, Thanksgiving animal korban, be accompanied by 4 varieties of bread consisting of 10 loaves each. No part of the loaves is offered on the Mizbeach. Rather, the todah is slaughtered and offered, thereby permitting the loaves to be eaten. 1 loaf of each variety is given to the Kohen to be eaten by him and his household, and the remaining loaves are eaten by the owner of the todah and his guests. Like the todah itself, the breads that accompany it are kodashim kelim. 2. The Nazir's loaves. A Nazir, a person who took an oath of Naziros, prohibiting him from drinking wine or eating grape products, cutting his hair, and becoming tameh to a dead person, must offer 3 animal korbanos when he completes his term of Naziros. Along with these, he must bring 2 types of unleavened bread, chalos and rikikin, see below. 1 loaf of each kind is waved by the Kohen along with the thigh of the Nazir's shalamim ram. The loaves and thigh that were waved are given to the Kohanim to eat. The remaining 9 loaves of each variety are eaten by the Nazir and his guests. See Vayikra chapter 6, verse 13, and the following verses. And see chapter 7, Mishnah 2. Like the Shalamim they accompany, the loaves are Kodashim Kalim. 4. Preparing the Mincha. Before the Mincha is offered, its ingredients must be prepared and mixed. The way in which the ingredients are combined depends on the type of Mincha. The 5 voluntary Menachos are prepared as follows. 1. Minchas Solis. A small amount of oil is poured into an empty Kli Sheris, sanctified vestibule. This is called placing oil in a vessel. The flour is then added to the vessel. More oil is poured on the flour, and the ingredients are mixed together. This second application of oil, together with the mixing, is referred to as mixing. After it is mixed, all the oil that remains of its log is poured on the flour. This is known as pouring. A kometz of levona is then placed on top of the mixture of flour and oil. 2 and 3. Minchas machavas, minchas marcheshes. Those menachos too have their oil added in 3 stages. A small amount of oil is poured into an empty Kli Sheris, and the flour is then added. More oil is added to the dough and mixed together with it. Some lukewarm water is added, and the mixture is kneaded into dough, taking care that the dough does not become chametz. See chapter 5, Mishnah 2. The dough is divided into 10 loaves, and each loaf is fried in either a machavas or a marcheshes. Machavas is a flat griddle that allows most of the oil to burn off, thereby creating a loaf with a firm texture. Marcheshes is a deeper pan in which the oil collects, resulting in a softer loaf. See chapter 5, Mishnah 8. The fried loaves are then broken into pieces. This is known as breaking up. See chapter 6, Mishnah 4. They are then placed in a Kli Sheris. The rest of the oil is poured into the pieces. A kometz of levona is placed on top of the pieces. 4 and 5. Oven-baked mincha. The menachos that are baked in an oven can be made in one of 2 forms. Chalos, loaves, and rikikin, wafers. Unlike the other menachos mentioned, these are made with only 2 applications of oil. First, some oil is placed in a vessel. Then flour and water are added and kneaded into a dough, taking care that it does not become chametz. The dough is formed into either 10 chalos or 10 rikikin. If they are being formed into chalos, all the remaining oil is added to the dough and mixed in, and it is then baked. If they are being formed into rikikin, they are not mixed with oil. Instead, they are baked, and then some of the remaining oil is smeared on them. See Rambam Hilchas Maser Karbanos 13:8. This is called smearing. The baked chalos or rikikin are broken into pieces, and a kometz of levona is placed on them. See chapter 6, Mishnahs 3 and 4. The above describes the procedures for the 5 voluntary menachos. The obligatory menachos have slightly different procedures. D. Preliminary avodos. The preparation of the mincha thus far does not require the involvement of a Kohen. See Gemara 9a. The mincha mixture is now brought to the Kohen and, depending on the type of mincha, is subject to one or both of the following. 1. Tenufa, waving. The Kohen takes the mincha and waves it in all 4 directions, and up and down. This is required only for the Omer, the Sota's mincha, the Shtei Alechem, and 2 of the Nazir's loaves. 2. Hagasha, touching the mincha to the mizbeach. The Kohen takes the vessel containing the mincha and touches it to the southwest corner of the outer mizbeach. See Zvachim 63a. This is required for almost all menachos. See chapter 5, Mishnah 5. 5. The avodah. A. Mincha offerings that are subject to kamitza. The procedure for offering a korban is known as its avodah. As has been mentioned, there is a parallel between the avodah of animal korbanos and those of the mincha. Just as an animal korban has 4 essential avodos: 1. Slaughtering, 2. Receiving the blood, 3. Bringing it to the mizbeach, and 4. Throwing the blood onto the mizbeach, so too most mincha offerings undergo 4 corresponding avodos. These are 1. Kemitza, removing the small portion of flour or baked pieces to be burnt on the mizbeach. 2. Placing the portion removed in a Kli Sheris, sanctified service vessels. 3. Holacha, bringing it to the mizbeach. 4. Haktara, burning it on the mizbeach. The first avodah, kemitza, is performed as follows. The Kohen bends the 3 middle fingers of his right hand over his palm to form an open space. He then fills this space with the flour or baked pieces of the Mincha and removes it from the Mincha. The portion removed is known as the kometz, and what remains is referred to as remainder. Removing the kometz from the flour corresponds to the slaughter of the animal. Just as slaughtering the animal separates the essential mizbeach part, the blood of the animal, from the body of the offering, so too kamitza separates the kometz of the mincha from the flour. Placing the kometz in the kli sheres corresponds to receiving the animal's blood in a kli sheres. Both serve to further sanctify what is put inside for its special role on the mizbeach. Bringing the kometz to the mizbeach, holacha, corresponds to bringing the blood to the mizbeach, and burning the kometz on the mizbeach, haktara, corresponds to applying the blood to the mizbeach. See the Gemara in 13b. As mentioned above, the levona also plays an essential role in the mincha's offering. After a kometz of flour is removed and placed in a kli sheres, the levona is gathered from the mincha and added to the kometz. The two are then brought to the mizbeach and burnt together. See Sota 14b, Rambam Hilchas Maaser Korbanos 13:12. Burning the kometz in levona is essential to making the mincha valid. Before being placed on the mizbeach, the kometz is salted. Once the kometz and levona have been burnt on the mizbeach, the remainder of the mincha may be eaten. Since menachos are in the category of most holy offerings, they may be eaten only by kohanim and only in the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. See Vayikra chapter 2, verses 3 and 10. B. Mincha offerings that are burnt entirely. There are 3 types of mincha offerings that are entirely burnt on the mizbeach. These are the daily havritin offering of the Kohen Gadol, the minchas nesachim that accompanies the ola and shlamim offerings, and any mincha, whether obligatory or voluntary, that is brought by a Kohen. See chapter 6, Mishnah 2. Kamitza is not performed on these offerings. They are carried directly to the mizbeach, salted, and placed there for burning. 6. Wine offerings. Another type of offering is the wine nesech, libation. There are 2 types of wine offerings. The first is obligatory. It accompanies every ola or shalamim offering, as well as the offerings of a metzora. It comes together with a minchas nesachim. See section 3c. 6 lugan of wine are brought with a bull or cow, 4 with a ram, and 3 with a sheep. The second type of wine offering is a voluntary offering of wine alone, or wine together with a voluntary minchas nesachim. In such a case, a minimum of 3 lugan is required. See chapter 13, Mishnah 5. The wine is brought to the mizbeach in a kli sheres and poured into one of the 2 specially placed silver bowls, attached to the top of the mizbeach at its southwest corner. These bowls were punctured, and the wine drained from them into a pipe leading to deep cavities, shisin, beneath the mizbeach. See the Mishnah, Sukkah, chapter 4, Mishnah 9. Nowadays, when there is no temple, we cannot offer the mincha or any other offering. Nevertheless, the Gemara in 110a teaches that one who studies the laws of the mincha is considered as if he had actually offered it. May our study of Tractate Menachos be as favorable before God as a mincha offering, and may it be His will that the Beis Hamikdash be rebuilt speedily in our days, so that we may merit bringing korbanos on the mizbeach.